Hello everyone, wishing you a peaceful new day, filled with goodness and joy. Before we begin a new chapter, let's take a moment to look back at what happened in episode 3. After the flood, Hoai Ca returned to her old home, the simple, familiar place that once sheltered both mother and child. Though everything was in ruins, with the quiet support of Hung and the kindness of the villagers, she began rebuilding, starting from the smallest things. But when the past suddenly resurfaced, everything became even more uncertain. Two siblings from her ex-husband's side showed up, leaving behind a large sum of money, despite her clear refusal. What seemed like an act of kindness only weighed heavier on her heart. So what will she do with this unexpected gift? And will Hung remain steady enough to face the unresolved past by her side? Lyhoaica episode 4, where choices and pride collide with love and forgiveness. Let's find out together. Under the soft light of the early afternoon sun, Hoai Ca quietly returned home. Her slender figure stretched long across the red dirt path, now no longer muddy after the rain, like a strand of memory slowly making its way back to the present. Along the path, bright purple petunias mingled with wild pink blooms, swaying gently in the breeze, as if whispering words of comfort to the woman returning after a long, weary day. As she stepped into the familiar yard in front of Mr. Hung's house, where rows of green vegetables had just begun to revive after the flood, her gaze suddenly halted. There, in the corner of the yard, beside the old iron rabbit cage, something was different. A quiet surge of emotion rose within her unannounced. The mother rabbit had given birth, tiny pink kits huddled together in a bed of straw, squirming softly, so delicate, so peaceful. A faint smile touched her lips, rare, but full. She stepped closer, knelt down to observe them with care, her hand gently touching the lining beneath them. Luckily, the mother rabbit had chosen the right place this time. Had she given birth just a few days earlier, when they were still in the house that the flood had ravaged, the babies might not have survived. Without hesitation, Hoai Ca hurried to find a few old pieces of cardboard. Her hands, once hardened from gripping hose and digging through mud, now moved with surprising tenderness. She carefully realigned the nest, adjusting the straw with deliberate care, as though touching something sacred. A moment later, she picked a handful of freshwater spinach and placed it into a basket, a simple meal for the rabbit family, a quiet offering of gratitude for life that still remained. When everything was in place, Hoai Ca bent down, intending to find a few lychees left over from the market, but her hands suddenly froze. Her eyes fell upon something unexpected, a thick wad of money, neatly folded, lying silently at the bottom of her basket, as if it had always been there. She stood motionless, in the fading afternoon light, her hand reached for the bundle. Confusion flickered across her face. She had said no, firmly, clearly. The conversation earlier had ended at polite greetings and a refusal. Yet now, this money had reappeared, without a note, without a trace. She picked it up. The paper was cold, but the chill came not from touch, it came from the unease that slipped quietly into her chest. This wasn't just a few bills, it was a debt left unnamed, a burden she neither asked for nor wanted. She glanced around, the sky still held a trace of sunlight. The garden beds were still green, everything appeared calm, and yet, inside her, a storm had begun to stir. Her hand clenched, then slowly released. She didn't know where they lived. She couldn't return the money in person, she didn't want to owe them anything. But keeping it, that would be like carrying an unhealed wound close to her heart. A long while later, she stepped into the house. In her hand, the wad of money still sat, heavier than anything she had ever carried back from the market. And in her heart, a question without an answer lingered, unresolved. The sound of a motorbike echoed in the quiet yard, a familiar sign that Hung was home, after a long day. He parked the bike, still sweaty and tired. Then his eyes caught the rabbit hutch. He walked over slowly, quietly watching the newborn bunnies, tiny, white, curled in their warm straw nest. A rare, gentle smile touched his lips, as if that moment alone soothed away all the day's weariness. Hung stepped inside. Under the dim yellow light from the low ceiling, Hoai Ca sat with her head slightly bowed, a quiet sadness on her delicate brow. He sensed something had happened, but didn't ask. He just walked slowly toward her, letting silence make space for her to speak. She did. In a soft voice, Hoai Ca told him his two sisters had come by earlier. They'd handed her a wad of cash, said it was to help, to make up for the past. She'd refused, clearly and firmly, but when she got back, the money was there in her bag. She had no idea when they'd slipped it in. Her voice sank. She didn't want more involvement, or to owe them anything. Hung listened silently. His eyes were deep and calm, like a lake after rain. He understood, it wasn't just about the money. She was trying to hold on to the fragile piece inside her. And more than that, she was protecting something they were both slowly building, a bond unnamed, but worth keeping. In a low, steady voice, he told her, whether she returned the money or kept it, it was her call. She shouldn't carry the weight alone. Maybe the sisters were just trying to make amends in their own way. Hoai Ca shook her head firmly. She wanted to return it, just didn't know how. He nodded, promised to ask his colleagues to help track them down, and said he'd let her know. After easing her thoughts, Hung gently held her hand, not tightly, just enough to pass on a little warmth. He leaned in slightly, voice like a breeze, "Have you eaten yet?" Without waiting for her answer, he continued, his tone still calm and kind, but firm, like someone too used to seeing her put herself last. "Whatever happens, make sure you eat. Your health matters most." The words were simple, not grand, but they stirred something warm in her chest. She didn't reply, just gave a small nod, a silent promise. The burden hadn't lifted, but she no longer felt alone. Someone was quietly beside her, like a breeze, just enough to keep the cold away. At Hoai Ca's house, after many days of the floodwaters receding, her mother finally managed to make her way over. Her frail figure seemed almost swallowed by the chaos around her. She stood frozen in place, staring at the thatched roof that had only recently been rebuilt, now sagging, torn, as if it had never been patched up at all. The front yard was a muddy mess, pots and bowls, scattered and half-submerged in stagnant puddles. The kitchen had lost an entire corner, left exposed and lonely on the cold, bare ground. She couldn't hold back a sigh. A whisper escaped her lips, soft, as if meant only for herself. "Oh dear, that flood was devastating. My daughter had just finished building this house, and now it's all in ruins again." She called out for Hoai Ca and her grandson, but no one answered. Anxiously, she began circling the house, calling names, scanning every empty space. The path to the backyard was now just a stretch of soggy mud. Every step sank deep, ankle-deep in thick sludge. Along the stream's edge, the bank had collapsed in jagged sections, and an old tree's roots lay bare, teetering on the verge of falling. She stopped, her chest tightening. This year's flood was harsher than she had feared. Yet, amidst the destruction, something eased her heart. The chickens were still there. The co-op leaned precariously, the tin roof half gone, but the chickens had survived, scratching at the earth, clucking softly as they moved through the muddy yard. Seeing them, she exhaled a slow, heavy breath, as if letting go of a weight she'd carried in silence. Among all that had been swept away, at least, the heavens had left her daughter something, just enough to begin again. Footsteps rustled behind her, familiar, slow, muddied. It was Hoai Ca. She appeared in the soft light of the afternoon, face weary and dust-covered, but her eyes softened the moment they met her mother's. Without a word, she walked over and gently invited her mother to sit down on the old bamboo chair still clinging to the edge of the porch. Before her mother could speak, Hoai Ca quietly began to explain, her voice low and steady, as if afraid to touch something too fragile. She shared why she hadn't told her mother about the full extent of the damage, because she didn't want to make her worrying, and even more so, because she didn't want a woman her age already worn down by life to lose sleep over something Hoai Ca believed she could carry alone. She said that An Hung had called in help to level the ground. The villagers had come to assist with the cleanup. The village head had even visited to assess the losses and promised to request support based on the damage report. Every word she spoke came out calm and even, but behind it all was a quiet effort to keep her mother's heart at peace. Her mother turned to her, eyes glistening with emotion. "That An Hung, he's truly kind, helping you like this my heart feels at ease." Hoai Ca only smiled, saying nothing more. Then she told her mother she planned to stay back that evening to catch chickens, preparing for the early morning market. She asked her mother to watch over Tony for the night, and without hesitation, her mother nodded. When her mother offered to help clean up the house, Hoai Ca gently declined. Her tone was soft, but resolute. She explained that she and Tony were still staying at An Hung's place for now, and though he was busy, he always made time to check on her land each evening. She would repair the house bit by bit once the fence was up. Everything would be manageable. Before leaving, her mother took her hand bony, warm, and gave a final reminder. "Only come back once the house is ready. Make sure the fencing is strong. Stay at An Hung's a while longer. Don't rush." Hoai Ca gave a small nod. Standing under the porch roof, she watched her mother's figure slowly fade down the red dirt path, her heart tightening like a string pulled taut to its very end. She said nothing, just gripped the edge of her coat tightly, then turned back inside to continue the unfinished work. On her was a pair of muddy green boots and a faded patterned jacket. Her small figure moved slowly across the yard, every step steady, every glance carrying the quiet resolve of someone long used to walking through hardship. Without hesitation, Hoai Ca grabbed the hoe leaning in the corner and began leveling the uneven mounds of dirt scattered across the yard. Her strokes were not forceful, but steady and deliberate. Each clump of soil was smoothed out, as if she were trying to erase not just the remnants of the flood, but also the silent burdens she had long carried alone. Once the ground was even again, she returned to the kitchen and gently wiped down each pot, each bowl. They were old, chipped, worn, but they were what remained after the storm. She dried them one by one and placed them neatly on the bamboo shelf. Not for decoration, but so that the kitchen would no longer feel abandoned. So that, once again, the space could be called home. With the kitchen in order, she headed straight to the chicken coop. Beneath the eaves still streaked with mud, she crouched down and began slicing banana trunks. The stalks had been split ahead of time, white, crisp, glistening with moisture. She cut each slice evenly, mixing them with bran inside a worn-out feed sack. Hoai Ca poured each bucket of feed out onto a tarp and sat back, watching. A soft curve appeared at the corner of her lips, not quite a smile, but unmistakably a breath of relief. In the late afternoon, as the sun faded over the last patch of grass in the yard, An Hung returned to Hoai Circus house. The familiar sound of his motorbike had barely died down before he stepped into the yard, his eyes immediately searching for her. She was there still in her faded jacket, hands dusted with earth, but the sadness once lingering in her gaze had softened. Seeing her crouched, carefully preparing to catch chickens for the early morning market, he didn't ask questions or wait for her to call. He simply rolled up his sleeves and stepped into the chicken coop beside her, a quiet reflex of someone who had always stood silently by her side. Without needing to say a word, that one gesture told her she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. Under the slanting light of the setting sun, they moved together into the coop behind the garden. No instructions were needed. They worked in perfect rhythm, as if this had been a shared routine for years. Hoai Ca bent low, softly coaxing the birds, all the while showing him how to tie their legs gently so they wouldn't get hurt. "My chickens are gentle, easy to catch," she said, her voice small but certain. And Hun chuckled, accepting each plump bird from her hands, remarking with quiet pride, "You take good care of them, every one of them feels heavy." When they finished, Hoai Ca carefully placed the chickens into two bamboo cages, tied them securely, and loaded them into her basket. As always, she would sit behind and carry the chickens, while Hun would handle the motorbike. Before starting the engine, he turned back to remind her to sit steady and keep her balance. The dirt road could be slippery. She nodded gently, her gaze calm, already familiar with his quiet concern, and the quiet journeys they had come to share. Early the next morning, as the sun still hid behind a veil of mist stretching across the mountain peaks, Hoai Ca arrived at the highland market. The dirt road still bore the tracks of early deliveries, but she walked slowly, steadily carrying on her back the fruits of the previous day's hard work. She picked a small corner by the roadside, shaded by a leafy tree and kissed by a gentle breeze. Setting down her load with care, she spread out a white canvas on the ground, then began arranging the chickens she had tied securely the night before. Each one had been tended to meticulously, not just for safety, but to ensure they looked clean and appealing. Despite the late night and lack of sleep, a gentle smile lingered on Hoai Ca's face, quiet and graceful, just like her presence. The market grew livelier by the minute. People moved in and out, voices rising in a familiar chorus of bargaining, laughter, and calling. The healthiest chickens were quickly picked out. One by one, customers stopped by, choosing, weighing, and leaving with a bird in hand. Hoai Ca calculated each sale quickly and precisely, no hesitation, like someone who had done this 100 times before. But after every transaction, a soft light would flicker in her eyes, because to her, each chicken sold wasn't just a trade, it was the reward of months of care, a few more hearty meals for Tony, a sliver of hope to buy feed for the rest of the flock, and a step closer to a life less burdened. The plump, healthy chickens were quickly sold out by Hoai Ca. She gave a gentle smile, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. After tidying up her store, she made her way home, stopping briefly at a small roadside shop that sold farming tools. Plastic feed trays were neatly stacked in low piles. Without hesitation, she took out the money, paid decisively, and offered a soft smile along with a polite nod of thanks. In the golden light of early mornings, threading across the ground, amid the bustling atmosphere of the highland market, Hoai Ca appeared like a quiet, low note in a vibrant melody, not loud, not dazzling, but quietly radiant, a light born of steadfastness, of a quiet will that never yields. Another day comes to a close. Amid the wreckage, Hoai Ca quietly stands her ground, gathering hope from newborn bellies, modest market trips, and the quiet care of the men beside her. But how long can this peace last, when the old money still lingers, when the past refuses to let go, and when Hun begins to face opposition from his own family? See you in LS Hoai Ca, Episode 5, where the unspoken will slowly come to light. And if you're still following this journey, leave a message for Hoai Ca and her child, so they'll know they've never been alone.
Một ngày nữa khép lại, giữa đổ nát, Hoai Ca vẫn âm thầm đứng vững, gom góp hy vọng từ đàn thỏ con mới sinh, những chuyến chợ nhỏ và sự quan tâm lặng lẽ từ người đàn ông bên cạnh. Nhưng bình yên ấy sẽ kéo dài bao lâu, khi món tiền cũ vẫn còn đó, khi quá khứ chưa buông tha, và khi anh Hùng bắt đầu đối mặt với sự ngăn cản từ chính gia đình mình. Hẹn gặp lại ở Lý Hoài Ca tập 5, nơi những điều chưa nói sẽ dần được hé lộ. Và nếu bạn vẫn đang theo dõi hành trình này, hãy để lại một lời chúc cho mẹ con Hoài Ca để họ biết rằng họ không hề đơn độc.